The artist Martin Gale lives in County Kildare with his partner Marion. Do you spend much time thinking about what you're going to paint, or do you just get into it and let it happen?
No, yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And where do you do your thinking? Is it sitting down? Is it early in the morning, late at night, or going for
Well, it's very early in the morning. You know, I tend to wake up.
I didn't think you did that.
I'm not a morning person. No, I'm still in bed.
I see. So that's where you get all the information.
But sometimes you wake at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're semi-comatose.
Yeah.
But it's a great time because there's nothing else to distract you. And I don't know, it's almost like you've got a little bit of an access to a part of your imagination that you don't normally have. And wake up fully and you've probably forgotten half of it. I was born in Worcestershire actually, but I think it was my parents just happened to be in England when I was born. My father was English, and my mother was Irish, kind of Irish. Her family actually came from Norfolk originally, and moved to Canada in the 1840s, and returned to Ireland in the beginning of the 20th century. In fact, my grandfather was born on Staten Island on the way, my paternal grandfather was born on Staten Island on the way back from Canada.
Yes.
And they settled in Galway, and they had made a lot of money on I think they worked on, they opened up, or were involved in opening up the navigation of the Great Lakes up into Ottawa, as far as I know. And anyway, they came, as I say, my grandfather was born in Staten Island, and then they bought land in Galway and in Connemara, a place called Fermoy Lodge, which was just a sort of a hunting and fishing lodge. And he didn't work. I mean, he had a degree from Cambridge in engineering, I think, but never used it, and was just the sporting life, you know, killing small animals, basically. I know. Then along came 1929, completely wiped out. Everything he had, all his money was in Wall Street.
Yes.
And when the crash came, he was completely wiped out. My mother was at boarding school in England, had to come back. They had men working, you know, on the various places they had. All had to be let go. And my mother and her sister ran the horse side of the business, which was they rented horses out for people to go hunting on. And it was a riches to rags story, to be honest with you. He became great friends with the Irish painter, the Belfast painter called Charles Lamb, who used to come and paint, and he stayed until before he bought his own place in Carrow. He used to stay there. And anyway, my mother grew up knowing Lamb, seeing him painting, all this kind of thing, and that fed into. She always told us stories. I've got a little painting in the house that she watched Charles Lamb paint in front of a lake when she was 8 years old. So this was always kind of part of the family mythology, and because Lamb was relatively successful, it was never frowned upon if you said, "Yeah, I think I might be an artist when I grow up." Oh, well, okay then, you know, yeah, good luck with it. But there was no sort of, don't be ridiculous, get a proper job. That never, because none of them had proper jobs anyway. I didn't really know the meaning of the word. Because my father's family had money. I think they were Gales, and they had, in the 1800s, they started in Southampton, I think, a little brewery of Gale's Ales, which flourished until until the late 1890s, when the main man died and his wife inherited the whole business. She unfortunately had religion and realised that alcohol was ruining the working classes, so she sold a whole lot. Basically, they got through all the money as well. And long before my father was born, but certainly before my brother and I were born, any money that was in the family was long gone. I think, the old double demon of slow horses and fast women took care of a lot of any money they had. So by the time it filtered down to my father, the money was all gone. That tree, there's a site of several paintings, you'll see, But normally it'd be bare tree, bare branches, and a very different place in the winter.
So there's a painting that I know quite well of the man walking, and there's a bit of a puddle to the left.
Yeah, there's one of a woman walking down there looking back up It's just the way I can walk 20 years walking by that one particular corner, and then one day suddenly, for some reason, it strikes me as a potential site for painting. Anyway, I started to do a series of paintings of people because we live about a mile outside the village, so people would be walking by going to the village, and I started using them in painting. And I'm interested in where we live here. There's a strange kind of paradigm of people. There are urban people living here, for want of a better term. You know, it's not just all farming community. There's a mixed community, and that's what I find interesting. Actually, there's a painting inside. We might have a look at it of a person who's here, but not of here. If you know what I mean. A lot of it is just, I suppose, it's just subconsciously, really, the way people live here and the way people are changed by here and the way they change the place. You know, it's all interesting, actually. It's not. You know, I think the paintings, although they're landscape based, are never about the landscape just.
In 1982, Martin Gale became a member of Aosdána in recognition of his contribution to the arts in Ireland. He became a full member of the Royal Hibernian Academy of Arts, the RHA, in 1996, and in 2013 was awarded an honorary doctorate in fine art from Maynooth University. Where did you go to school?
I went to Newbridge College in County Kildare, which was, actually that was probably the start of it, because Newbridge was an old boys boarding school at the time, run by the Dominicans, and it was a pretty tough place, to be honest with you. You know, corporal punishment was on the cards. You got quite a lot of that around. You got a very good education, but whether you wanted it or not, you know, you intimidated into it. So it was that. But I used to do a thing. The college is built on the river, on a Liffey, and I used to break out of bounds, out through fields at the back, and go down the river at the weekends and spend the afternoon just down on my own, just getting away from, you know, the whole milieu in the college. And I was always interested in birds and wildlife, and you know, I'd spend the whole afternoon when everybody else is, I don't know, watching rugby or doing something else. You know, if it was free time, it wasn't class time, and I'd be down the river, zoning out, or just staring at the sky, you know, and getting away from it, I suppose. Yeah. And that was where I think that probably fed into the whole art thing, you know, but because a lot of my paintings, they're all basically landscape based, and there's elements of wildlife come into them, this kind of stuff, and I got very comfortable in my own company doing that. So I think probably that was part of forming the part of me that became an artist, I suppose, you know. There was several paintings of just this little stretch of road. There's a series of paintings I made, I think probably around 2016, 2017, around Halloween, and kids with masks and that kind of stuff. And you can't see, but you see where that copper beach is? Well, just on the left there, it's a gateway down into a place, and I've used this view, and you know, using that gateway as a figure standing there, and there were two children in Halloween costumes standing against that railings there. Again, it was autumn, so there were no leaves on the trees. It was Halloween's in the end of October, whatever it is. And so the painting took in that, and then the road. I can't remember. I don't think there was anything coming down the road. There was also something else I did here. Oh yeah, there was a painting called one of the lockdown paintings, which was a big thing. It was 4 foot square. It was called the space between us. I think the distance between us. That's right. It was to do with the way during lockdown, walking around and meeting people on the road, and they were over there. You know, yes. You couldn't stand next to somebody and talk to them because everybody was paranoid. And so there were two figures standing either side of that gateway by the copper beach there, which was just enough. It was called Distance Between Us, and it was one of the kind of secondary things. But one of the figures was an old man, elderly man anyway, wearing the suit and the hat, the kind of countryman, and the other guy was a young guy. So there was the distance between us had two meanings. It was the distance between us because of the lockdown, but also there was a fairly obvious generational distance between them as well, you know.
Yeah.
And they were on opposite sides of the road. So that was the painting. Anyway, but that was the location of that one.
Why did you decide to go to art college?
It's funny. In some ways, it was kind of for all the wrong reasons, because I had a job. My father had a bit of influence, and he pulled me into a job in a rank organisation, which I last. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of trainee manager or something, and I lasted for 9 months. But I used to walk past the College of Art, go every day, going to work. And I'd see, you know, art students coming out of the college. I think, oh, geez, you know, I'd love to be in there. I'd love to,
yes.
you know, paint on my jeans and all this kind of stuff. And it just looked really romantic, you know. So I thought, you know, maybe I'd get to go there sometime. And I was working, the Ranks had an office up in Phibsborough at the time. And then right next to the office I was doing whatever I was doing in was the advertising section. And that looked more interesting, you know, they were doing posters and doing displays for, you know, marketing shows and that kind of stuff. And I remember going in there once and saying to the guy that ran it, yeah, I'd like to transfer in here. How do I get in here? And he said, well, you want to go to the College of Art and do graphic design or something like that. That was all I needed to hear, you know.
That's right. No, that's interesting. So that was the thing that sparked your...
That was it, yeah. And I remember saying to my parents, I want to go to College of Art because I want to study advertising. I want to get into the advertising department. I want to study graphic design. And, you know, which I didn't know what I was talking about. But anyway, they said, oh, grand, off you go, you know. So off I went. And as soon as I got into college, walked in the door, you know, smelled the smell of the turpentine and all the rest of it, and that was it, gone.
You knew you were home.
Straight, I was on track, you know. You know, suddenly when you just hit the moment, it's a kind of a Satori moment where you just hit this... I've landed in the right place.
And no doubt you met some interesting characters in art college, did you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Anyone stand out in your mind as being having an influence on you, or you know, just making a mark? Yeah,
but the time I was in the college was just at the start of the upheaval. You know, when the College of Art had been run by the Department of Education, who really had no interest in it, and they ran it as I don't know. I mean, they just ignored it. You know, it was a little educational backwater, really. But the RHA, which was a very different operation as it is now, had previously set its cap against modernism, and the RHA had the sort of running of the college, so that the courses were very kind of rooted in the 19th century. I remember there was one man that I found really useful. As a teacher was a man called Charles Cullen, who was he wasn't the best communicator in the world, but he had empathy, and he knew he'd come and sit down where you'd be in your little area, and he'd sit down and he'd want to know, you know, you had enough to eat today and that kind of thing, and he'd draw it out of you what you were trying to do. Yes. And he taught me quite a lot about preparing for painting, about how to go about, you know, setting up little alternatives. Like there are 3 ways of thinking of creativity. You know, you think about what you're going to do, then you find 2 or 3 alternatives to it, and then you make a choice. This kind of thing, you know. What the painting's going to be, there's a tiny little bit of a housing estate going to be coming in here, which is kind of just bleeding out onto the landscape, and then there'll be, pick up some of that sky and just a bit of flash flooding across there. So in a way, and the farmer's got this big black cloud hanging over him. So in a way, it's a little reference to, or a response to, because I live among farmers here, you know, and you hear the complaints all the time to do with the weather and, you know, the extra building and everything else that's going on. So without trying to make a case for farmers or anything like that, it's just to articulate the kind of pressures that contemporary farmers are feeling, I suppose, you know. The academic teachers, the RHA people there were some very nice men there, there's no question about that. But they suddenly had kind of lost their foothold. And it was an odd time.
But the RHA, they weren't teaching at that point, were they?
Well, no, but some of their members were.
Ah, right.
Their members were on the teaching staff,
yes.
you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And they were kind of towing an official line, which was the kind of RHA line during the middle of the 20th century, was when modernism came to Ireland in the late 20s, with Maynooth Jealous and Evie Hone and Mary Swansea, those people bought it. The RHA unfortunately set their cap against modernism, so they wouldn't show the modernists in their annual and that sort of stuff. So the modernists set up the Irish Exhibition of Living Art. It was about 1942 or 43, and that involved people like Pat Scott, Norm McGuinness, these kind of people. And so there was a division between the two, and unfortunately the Academy took the wrong path. I think we don't want to name names, but there were one or two very strong personalities in there who were dead set against modernism. It was all abstract painting was rubbish. He's a madman. This kind of stuff. So so that wasn't particularly attractive.
No.
So. It's obviously the Academy's changed now, and it's a completely different organisation. It's a really lively, vibrant place now, but it wasn't at the time.
No.
So,
and when you were in college, did you discover your particular strengths early on, or did you dabble in things like a bit of sculpture, a bit of printing, a bit of?
No, well, actually, funny enough, the first 2 years in the college was what's called was kind of 2 core years. You did where you did a bit of everything.
Yeah.
You did a bit of craft work. You did a bit of painting. You did a bit of printing. You did a little bit of everything, which was quite useful in a way. But I think probably 2 years was too much. A year would have been enough. One core year would have been enough, which I think it probably is now.
Yeah.
But no, it was more or less painting from the get-go for me. To be honest with you, yeah.
But did you find that after the first year or two that half of the your fellow students went one direction and you went the other direction?
They did, yeah, that's right, yeah. But at least half of them went straight to teaching.
Okay.
There was a course called Principles of Teaching, which, there was some chance of some kind of career doing that. But if you went into fine art, School of Painting, School of Sculpture, or even the School of Design, but certainly the 2 fine art schools, there was actually no guarantee of anything, Yeah.
So if we go back to the reason why you went there in the first place, which is the rank organisation. Is that what it's called? The rank organisation?
Rank organisation, yeah.
And their suggestion that you should go to college in order to do advertising. Yeah. Did you think of going into that area afterwards?
No. 5 minutes into college and I realised that wasn't what I wanted to do, I don't know. Now, the painting immediately just caught me, because we'd already, when I was a child, I had oil paints. My parents used to buy us oil paints and so on. And I remember painting outside as 8 or 9 years old, precociously setting up and dabbing away, painting hay barns and things. Yes. And my father painted on a part-time basis, just as a hobby. And so did both sides of the family further back. All had good amateur painters in their ranks.
So when you started out, what sort of style were you painting?
Well, I was interested in, funny enough, when I was because it was the end of the 60s and I went to college, and the 60s was an explosive period. We'd had the 50s and the whole sort of drab post-war era. Everything was black and white and dull, and the remains of kind of austerity from the post-war years was still there. The 60s suddenly burst into Technicolor, and I was very taken with pop art. I'd seen some of the work of the English pop artists who came out of the College of Art, the Royal College of Art in, say, 62, 63, which would be the Hockney, Peter Blake, that generation. And I kind of liked that stuff. Now, what was going on in the college, the other students were very involved with expressionism and abstract expressionism. It never really appealed to me, I must say. And I was painting large areas of flat colour and then small little areas within that. This would be really painted really in a sort of detailed manner. I remember one painting, and it was about 6 foot by 8 foot, and it was just a huge big green flat area. And there was a tiny little really accurately painted bungalow up in one corner with my parents standing outside us, painted from a photograph, really accurately. Yes. And then down the bottom there was a raven sitting on a rock, and that was every feather, it was one of those really detailed paintings against his flat backhand. So you had a couple of different styles in it. And anyway, that was what I was doing in the college until I left college and went down to live in County Wicklow. And the thing that I learnt, the one thing that I really learned or got out of college with two things, right? But a love for drawing, because as soon as the curriculum went out the window, I spent, and me and several other guys as well, spent 5 days a week down in the life drawing room, drawing, which we wouldn't have been allowed to do under the old curriculum. Yes. But because there was actually no course and such, we just spent our time down there learning to draw, and that was really valuable. Then when I went down to Wicklow, the other thing that you learn in college, I should say, is you learn this ability to see, to really see, not just to look and glance, but to really see and kind of, I suppose, visually analyse what you're looking at. And that, I moved down to live in West Wicklow with this, ability, and suddenly I was seeing the landscape. It wasn't just flat colours, I was seeing a much more kind of naturalistic, or whatever the right word is. And that fed into the painting pretty quickly. That little sketch I showed you in the book, that was up there. Now, it had a big puddle in here, and there was one called Couple, which was a couple of indeterminate age, if you know what I mean. They were like youngish people, but the way they were dressed, it could have been any time in the 20th century. I like not to be too specific. So anyway, they were walking. There's another one then called The Leaving, which was a man walking this way with a coat over his arm, and I think again there were probably puddles. But that was the location of both those paintings. Actually, it was one of the paintings which is just a straight landscape really, and it was. I'm sure the autumn, it was just all about the light, the way the light hit the tree, and some of in the background was kind of in shadow. So, different lighting conditions, the whole place can just totally change. I've got Yeah, I kind of feed the birds all year round. And one of the things once you do this, particularly when the kitchen window looking, the crows appear within no time. So you get loads of opportunities to draw them, because they sit around there and they sit up there, and they make raids down. Look at that tree there. That's what's in those two paintings you saw in the hall, or the one in the hall with the dogs are in the wood. It's just that bark of that tree.
All right, yes.
And the other one that's in the studio is which has the bird flying upside. It's that tree as well. I mean, how many times have I walked past that tree?
I know.
About 1 million.
Yeah.
And then one day it suddenly says, oh my God.
And would you have taken a photograph of that, for instance?
Yes.
Sketch?
Oh yeah. No, photograph. Yeah. Because it's about the little bits of texture in the. Yeah.
What is it about trees that appeals to you so much, Martin?
I don't know, really. I don't know what it is. They're magnificent. I think we don't understand enough about them, but I just love them. They're part of the furniture of the landscape, Yeah. And funny, when you see a tree cut down, particularly or a big one like that, say comes down in a storm, it's like a death. You kind of grieve for a tree that you know for a long time.
There's one in there.
Yeah, there's one in there, which the deer have stripped completely. All the bark has been stripped off by deer. If you came down here after dark, you'd see a number of deer in the fields here.
It's heartbreaking.
And they stripped the bark.
They stripped the bark, yeah.
Gosh, yeah, because it's quite ghostly looking, isn't it?
It is like it's a skeleton of a tree.
It's like a sculpture.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're a little like I feel, where you might feel about whales or elephants.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Big trees,
Something big and magnificent has been cut down to size. Alan, now this stretch of road here, again in the winter, there's a painting called Big John, which I think you might have seen. Yeah. He was plonked in the middle of the road right here. And now again there was no leaves on the trees, and it was much more, and there was a sunlight I think was streaming through the trees, and he was walking down the road with I think he's carrying a coat under his arm, and he looks, he's kind of big and imposing. Yes. He looks kind of a bit ominous actually, but he's just a local man. He's a friend, a guy I met. I met him, I think I told the story before, but we go through it again. I met him at a local sports day over in Hollywood in County Wicklow, I was chatting away to him, and as he walked away, I took a shot of him. And I had the shot at home, and God, it looks really, it's kind of imposing. He looks slightly ominous because he's a heavy man, and he's got a coat on his arm, and he's kind of plodding along. So anyway, I did the painting, and again I met him about a year later, and I said to John Brendan, I said, John, I did a painting of you, and it had been in the RHA annual, and it had appeared in one of the reviews and a photograph in the paper. I told him it was in the paper, and he was, oh, did you really? Would you like to take another one? So I said, oh, far away. So he stood there like that. And I took a photograph of him, and I couldn't do anything with it.
Bit posed.
Oh, he totally posed.
Yeah.
But, and I stuck it up on the wall in the studio anyway. And it kept catching my eye.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, why not do a painting of a man posing for a photograph, which is what it was.
Yes.
So that's kind of a good illustration, though, of the way the paintings can come from more or less anywhere. There's no kind of set path to lead to a painting. It didn't start with this, it started with him. And then I built it and said, oh, this is a great place to use him. So it kind of comes together. It's a bit like a mental collage in a way.
Do you spend much time thinking about what you're going to paint, or do you just get into it and let it happen?
No, yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about
Do
it.
you?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And where do you do your thinking? Is it sitting down? Is it early in the morning, late at night, or going for a
Well,
walk?
it's very early in the morning. I tend to wake up.
I didn't think you did that.
I'm not a morning person. No, I'm still in bed.
I see. So that's where you get all
Yeah,
the excitement.
But sometimes you wake at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're semi-comatose.
Yeah.
But it's a great time because there's nothing else to distract you. And I don't know, it's almost like you've got a little bit of an access to a part of your imagination that you don't normally have. And wake up fully and you've probably forgotten half of it. But but I do think, often think long and hard about what I'm doing. And you carry ideas, like a bit of half-formed ideas for paintings, and you carry them on in your head, sometimes for weeks or months. But there's a painting in the back of my head that's been there for about 2 years, and I know where where it's going to be, but I haven't fully worked out. I can kind of see it, but not quite. You know what I mean? It hasn't quite come into focus yet. But it's probably in the shower one morning or something it'll hit, hopefully, but eventually, and I'll go back to that location again and do more little drawings of it and stuff and see if I can coax it out. So there's no actual direct path to a painting.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is surprisingly instinctive, But then a painting can start from, not just from a location, but it can start from, sometimes the title comes first. Summary type thing, it feels like summer's on the way.
Isn't it? Doesn't it?
So, Marion, what's it like being married to an artist?
I don't
I
think
want
it
you to
matters.
hear this.
I don't think it matters
Don't
whether
tell me
it's an artist or whatever. It just matters that the two of you get on well together, or click together, or whatever. It wouldn't have mattered if he was, sort of running a company or.
But he is stuck at home.
He is stuck at home, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, I do a lot outside that.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm an artist widow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. We do spend a lot of time in each other's company, don't we?
Right. Yeah. But a lot of people, one of the problems I've heard women complaining about being married to an artist is they're not always 100% available because they tend to live in their own bubble,
I know when he's not available.
Yeah, well, it's just when you're miles away. It's just
Yeah.
in your head.
Yes.
Is that the same for any creative, or is that
Oh, I'd say
specifically artists?
I'd say it's any creative. I'd say the writer is the same. They're
Yeah.
locked into a book they're writing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
Even more so, maybe.
Yeah, probably more so, yeah.
Would you work on a number of paintings at one time or not?
No, I've tried that. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work, yeah.
No, I think when you're doing a painting, 'cause my paintings take quite a long time, and sometimes they change my mind halfway through them. But what you have to do is just sink into that world that you're creating, whether it's that size or 6 foot square, whatever. You're immersed in that world, and so I can't skip from one to the other. Really, I lose the momentum. There's a certain momentum that goes with the painting. It's also, although the paintings work slowly, once I get going on them, I have to get them all done within, say, 3 weeks to a month. Otherwise, the momentum is gone. I've done that. I put paintings down that I think haven't been working out. Come back to them maybe, months later, and it's gone. It's dead. The thing's not going to work. Just scrap it.
And do you, would you work 7 days a week?
I wish I could. No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Well, but that's interesting because, in a way, the answer is yes, because it's always in your head.
Yeah.
And I can come into the studio and spend 4 or 5 hours in here doing nothing. Messing, tidying things and fiddling around, or, and just. But you're kind of, it's all part of it. It's all part of the whole process. I've often come in, say mid-morning or lunchtime, and 7 o'clock in the evening, suddenly say, I know, yeah, exactly, now I'm going to get at it. And then you're still there till 1 in the morning or something, So there's I've no routine at all.